Thank you all and good afternoon. We'd like to go ahead and get the Subcommittee on Higher Education started. And I don't know how many of you heard earlier that there was an active shooter on the campus of Bridgewater College earlier at a little after 3 this afternoon. And Governor Youngkin has indicated that the person has been captured in custody. And there was an officer reported to have been shot. As a result of this active shooter, both Virginia State Police and local law enforcement in the city of Harrisonburg are on the scene at Bridgewater. And students have been told to shelter in place on the campus and are being provided with instructions as to what to do additionally on that campus. So just to keep you informed of what's going on there. But thank you for joining us here today. And we have 2 presentations that will be made to the subcommittee this afternoon. And first, we're going to make a slight adjustment to our schedule from what was initially published. Last week, we had a conversation about the Virginia College Affordability Network, VCAN, and we're going to hear a second one. Is that Jesus Calling? Okay. And this one will be from Dr. Julie Coleman. Dr. Coleman is the Director of VCAN and Strategic Initiatives at Virginia State University. And she will join us to report on the program at Virginia State. And so we will then receive an update on enrollment, retention, and completion trends in Virginia's public institutions from Peter Blake and Paula Robinson from Chev. And thank all of you for joining us today. And just to, our weekly reminder that the Senate is recording and live streaming each of its subcommittee meetings, including this one. Today's agenda and presentation materials are available on LIS, and we would ask that everyone speaking today be sure to speak into their microphones so that those viewing will be able to hear what's being presented today. So thank you, and Dr. Coleman, please join us.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Virginia Senate Finance and Appropriations Subcommittee on Higher Education. There we go. Within that first semester, and I pushed it, that's crazy. Within that first semester, VCAN scholars have been able to participate in those first year experience activities, and they've been able to feel connected to those different resources that I've mentioned. They have personalized check-in opportunities with the staff of VCAN, whether individual or cohort model. They have various connections to mentorships, internships, and opportunities that are exposed them to different roads. They have a virtual community amongst themselves. If they have questions about professors or processes, they're able to communicate with one another. And they've been able to actually be a part of our recruitment strategies and activities. We recently had a wonderful student, phenomenal feedback that they provided to Petersburg High School about their experience and to the upcoming class coming out. So with that being said, they have been able to represent our institution, both local and within our community. Miss Freshman for the 2021-2022 academic year is a VCAN scholar. The secretary of our freshman council she is also a scholar. And just recently, another one of our scholars was sworn in as a deputy sheriff locally as well, right? As we look into the future, we continue to focus on the student immediately that's surrounding our campus and our Richmond area. The university seeks to provide opportunity and access in all of our rural and surrounding areas. Our programming will offer more opportunities for cultural, education, social experiences to enhance their student success. VCAN at Virginia State University, we will continue to recruit, we will continue to retain, to empower, to graduate, and advance our local students. And so, on behalf of Virginia State University, Madam Chair and Senators, we thank you so much for the support, for the proposed increase and expansion of VCAN and the governor's budget for both Virginia State University and NSU. The radius expansion itself allows us to meet the interests in the communities that have been identified as low degree attainment, according to some information that we recently discovered with Chev. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Coleman. One question, how many students do you have in your program?
We have a little over 300 scholars.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Other questions? Senator
How
Ruff.
do you promote it?
We are able to connect with our local communities. I've reached out with our current scholars just to ask them personally, what is that one counselor that you've felt connected with? We've been able to work with our local communities, such as GRASP, nonprofits. We've been able to work also with our degrees, our deans of our colleges and their outreach as well, so that we could partner together. And of course, with the admissions team and making sure that we're right there with them and recruiting along and reaching out to the students.
Other questions?
Madam
Senator
Chair,
Ruff?
I guess you mentioned the more populated areas, but since I represent the less populated areas of Prince George and Dinwiddie and Brunswick, you are reaching out to those areas too.
Absolutely. We take a record of the students that we currently have present. We were able to identify those schools. We've been able to reach out to the schools. We've been able to make initial contact of visitation, virtual presentations, and then some recruitment opportunities for open houses and invitations to our home.
Thank you.
Yes.
Other questions? Well, thank you, and I look forward to seeing what you can do with your expansion of this program.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senators.
Thank you. Okay. Peter Blake, you're up next with the update on enrollment trends.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the subcommittee. Pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having Chev with you again. And I'll try to be.
Hello. Okay. Did you turn that off? Let me start from the top. Paula Robinson and I are pleased to be with you today, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, and thanks for having us again. We're going to talk a little bit about enrollments, but just as important as enrollments are retention and completion. So a big overview is that We're going to talk about enrollment changes, high school projections. These are some data that you've seen before, but it never hurts to repeat this because it will have a bearing on your work this session as well as sessions in the future. And then, as we've done in the past, talk about some potential strategies either at the institution, statewide, or some policy and budget things that you might consider as you go forward. So what are the factors? Let me also go back and just start with the big picture on the right. That is from the Chev strategic plan, and right in the middle of that circle is making Virginia the best state for education. And we believe that we need to have about 70% of our working age population with some kind of credential beyond high school, workforce credential, associate degree, bachelor's degree, by 2030 to reach that goal. If you look at some of the things on the horizon, we might need to take some additional efforts than just the status quo in order to get there. So that's what I wanted to just call your attention to. The two biggest factors that affect enrollment are those you let in and those you retain to graduation. And those two factors are the ones where really we ought to be giving our focus. The kinds of things that can affect them are the programs that you offer, whether they have some relevance to the market. And then we've had some shocks to the system through the pandemic and other things that have occurred over the last couple of years that are playing themselves out in the numbers that we're seeing. Why is this important? One, they have an impact on your operating budgets. I'm sure you've been getting requests from institutions saying that their per student funding is different from others and it needs some sort of correcting, for example. So this has an impact on your operating budgets. Capital needs, complicated by the hybrid world that we're in these days. You have some other considerations that you'd want to make about how you fund capital in the future, potentially. Student financial aid, where you've been very generous over the years. And then without doing some of these things, we may not meet our state goals for higher education. A couple of big pictures here. This is what's happened since 2017, so pre-pandemic and then post-pandemic. We're losing some enrollment, you'll see, at the in-state undergraduate level. This is our four-year institutions. Picking up a little bit on the graduate side, as you'll see, both out-of-state and out-of-state undergraduates as well as graduate students to offset that.
Where are those numbers above the line? I mean, you got to have more than 957 out-of-state students. What is that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, Senator. That's the difference between the 2 years. So there's a net loss of 2,917, but there's been a pickup of 957.
Mr. Chairman, while we've stopped, Peter, since we stopped at that point, do you these four schools that are losing the most, Longwood, Redford, Mary Washington, UVA Wise, are y'all finding out why or where those students are going? Are they going to other schools, or are they just getting out of college, or what are they doing?
Yeah, that's a good question, Madam Chair, Senator Ruff. We're monitoring that with them. They have strategies in place. There are a number of things that have changed in their environment. They're losing out-of-state students to out-of-state institutions. They're losing some students from Virginia who might have gone to those institutions in the past, but now are going to Alabama or South Carolina, for example. Some of the states that they traditionally have recruited from are losing population even more than losing the number of high school graduates even more than Virginia is. So there's a number of effects that are at play with these numbers. They all have strategies in place, and they're all monitoring it very closely. And we can go into more detail later if you'd like.
Madam Chair.
I don't want anybody to hear me. Peter, a couple of things. Traditionally, I have looked at those four schools on sort of a baseline of funding because I think I don't mean this in a disingenuous way, but sometimes they are more economically challenged because they don't have the endowments of the University of Virginia or William and Mary and some other places. And so I have been sensitive to those schools when we've looked at funding issues, and also they have a significant percentage of in-state students, and then their curriculums are not as diversified, say, as Virginia Tech, who wants to be everything to everybody. And you've heard my sermon on that before, so I'll spare you today. I'm just interested, do you have any positive suggestions on what we can do to help mitigate the loss of students, which translates into the loss of revenue, particularly as to the loss of out-of-state students?
Madam Chair, Senator Norman, we've had some conversations. A couple of years ago, you made a change in the code to allow UVA-Ys to charge a lower rate for out-of-state students, for students who lived within the Appalachian region. Right now, there's a requirement in the Appropriation Act that out-of-state students pay at least 100% of cost. You might consider some flexibility for certain institutions on that policy.
But, Madam Chairman, but some of these schools, particularly during the pandemic situation, I see what the number is, but some of these schools experienced a significant loss in foreign students because their families did not want them coming to the United States in the pandemic situation. So where you've got those students paying 105% of the cost of education, the comparative impact of the loss of those students is greater than an in-state student.
Your math is correct.
Don't you agree?
Yeah. Your math is correct, Senator.
All right. Another concern, this is the last one, Madam Chairman. I'm going to get myself in trouble here. I see William and Mary is here, and the former William and Mary champion is here. When I see that the University of Virginia wants and has significantly embarked on increasing the size of their enrollment, when I see that William and Mary wants to increase theirs by approximately 600 students, what that suggests to me, there is not a lack of qualified applicants to either of those schools out there. And of course, Tech has become humongous. There's not a lack of qualified applicants, but by expanding those enrollments in the major universities, what they are doing in effect is they're digging down deeper into the applicant pool, and some of the students that would be going to Longwood, Radford, Mary Washington are now finding themselves having been accepted to another school that they might think is more prestigious, which is a misnomer. What are we doing about that? Because you and Chev continue to allow them to increase their enrollments, increase their curriculums. What are we doing about it?
That's a great question, Madam Chair. What are we doing about it? Well, there's provisions in the Code of Virginia that you could modify that could have an impact on that.
What?
Items related to admissions policies at the institutions. Items that relate to our authority on approving enrollment projections and whatever consequences that could occur if an institution exceeded those approved enrollment projections. I mean, there are some things that if that was the will of the General Assembly and you wanted to approach it in that way, you could.
Madam Chairman, I realize, I'm just a wild hare and bat poop crazy. I accept that. But I've been talking about this for several years. Can we cap the enrollment of some of these schools? Say you cannot enroll more than these number of students?
Madam Chair, Senator, I don't know that you have done that in the past.
No, can we do it?
You can do whatever you'd like, sir, if you get, the will of the General Assembly behind you.
Well, if Senator Locke will make me king for a day, I'll do it.
I'd be happy to.
One day.
I can describe a little bit about how we do the enrollment projections. The institutions submit them, and we review them as part of what we call the 6-year plan process, which April is there as your representative. We look at the numbers, we compare them to what appears to be the market, and then we approve them.
No, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Said I was going to be quiet.
You said you were done.
We just heard of what I thought was an extraordinary presentation from the young lady from Virginia State, and I assume there's a face behind the mask that somebody's actually there. But they're working very hard in our historical black colleges to recruit, and this program that we've got with the 25-mile-hour radius to bring people in. But as a result of the consciousness of DEI, which I won't editorialize on today, but there is a greater tacit pressure on our public colleges and universities to recruit more minority students. And here, Virginia State is out there with an innovative program to try to bring more people in, to afford educational opportunities, perhaps to some young people that might not ordinarily be there. I worry that this increase in this enrollment, coupled with this DEI initiative, is potentially going to put greater stress on the enrollment in historical black colleges. Explain to me how that formula is not going to work.
Madam Chair, Senator Norman, I was pleased to see that Norfolk State's enrollment has increased by 7% over this period of time. So,
I'm sorry, I wasn't even in court today, and I'm crossing.
yeah, no, Madam Chair, just this year's enrollment projections, UVA, Virginia Tech, James Madison a little bit. April, you might be able to help me. Those institutions were not projecting additional growth over the next 7 years. George Mason was, James Madison is. I'm not sure. I'd have to remember what William and Mary said.
15 years for 4 years.
So I'd be happy to go back and look at those numbers, Senator, and talk to you and your colleagues about that. I do have a mention of it in my slides later on.
I'm just saying there are consequences to this
Yes.
stuff, and I guess that's my bottom line.
Madam Chairman, wow, here, cut in on me for a minute. All right.
Oh, is it contagious?
I think Senator Edwards was trying
Is it contagious?
Well, what I was going to ask, and I read this, and I assume it's true, that and I want to ask you, the fact that there are fewer in-state students is mostly because of the COVID. People are saying, in many cases, I'm going to take a year off because of COVID and come back later when it's over. Is that your understanding too, or is there something else going on?
Madam Chair, Senator Edwards, we expected a lot worse, and it didn't happen. So, I mean, that 29-17 is really not too bad given everything else that we faced. So there's a little bit of COVID, there was a little bit of taking a year off, but it was not nearly as severe as we had originally feared.
Madam Chair, my understanding, because of COVID, people were taking a year off.
Right.
There's a correlation there. Is there anything else going on about people not going to college as much? Besides that, as far as you know.
Madam Chair, I mean, there are always challenges around affordability. You know, you can't afford it. Your family is unemployed. There may be some issues related to COVID that have caused some other kinds of obstruction to your pursuit. So there's a number of things.
Well, Madam Chair, the other thing has the affordability. You know, I've been pushing for years to go to the 1/3, 2/3 model. And we did it, I think, after I got a resolution passed in 1997, Gilmore actually put in $80 million just to reduce tuition alone. What else can we do to make sure tuition, other than financial aid, of course, we need more financial aid, obviously, but just from the fact that the state's not ponying up the 2/3
Yep.
like it used to. What do you recommend? More money?
Well, I like to say that, Madam Chair, that affordability has many parents. So you as a state have a responsibility to put up. The institutions certainly need to manage their costs. And then the student and the family need to find the most efficient pathway to something that's relevant to them and the workforce, such that they can, if they take on debt, they can pay it off. So there's many different ways that you can look at affordability. It's not all on you, Senator Edwards.
It's, like when I was in law school, I paid $500 tuition for both semesters. I worked for Scalia and made $600 that year. Worked in New York one summer, made $1,000 a month. I was basically, I didn't need much money to live on, of course, but that was back in the 60s, late 60s. And now it's just what the kids have to pay is just beyond belief. Shocking.
Thank you. I'm going I'm going to move
I
along.
want to follow
Yeah.
before we leave this one page. The 22% at Longwood, you said you were working on it. What we have done with state employees, we're going to employees that are leaving state agencies, and we're asking why. Are you doing that, or are you planning to do that with the students? They're not coming back.
Are we
Are we
inquiring?
systematically trying to find out exactly why people are not coming back?
I would have to talk to the institutions to find out what they're doing on the retention front. You're talking about someone who showed up one year and didn't come back the next year.
Right.
I'm sure they have some methods in place. I don't have the response for you today.
I think we need to figure out how we can more scientifically figure out why we're losing people that we should not be losing. Thank you.
Yes.
Peter, when I jumped ahead
Yeah.
from number 5, and I had not looked at that when I was lecturing you. But I go down there, Longwood, minus 22%. Bradford, 22.6. University of Mary Washington, 16.8. And then I look at some of the other numbers. Obviously something going on there, and I hadn't even looked at that slide.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something going on.
There's something in the water.
Madam Chair, I'm going to go back one page real quickly because we haven't talked about the community college. Their enrollment now is as low as it was 20 years ago. There's still something going on there that is unprecedented because traditionally when you have a down economy, people go back to the community colleges. That didn't happen during the mini down that occurred during COVID, and it continues to go down. I want to point out, though, that last number on the right, the 1920, that's an increase in your non-credit workforce credential grant program that you created in 2016. It's very small right now, but it's growing, and it's growing more so than the credit numbers. And in fact, the community colleges do more than what you see here, but they use other funds for it. So all we're capturing in this slide is that which comes from the workforce credential grant, the $13.5 million that you appropriate to support that program.
Madam Chairman, show me what their enrollment decline is, 22,000.
Right, yeah, right. 23,404, yeah.
Something in the water.
Yeah, Richard Bland's kind of an anomaly, but okay. So here's one of the challenges that they're facing, and you'll see that we're right now at 2021. We're going to see a continued increase in the number of high school graduates, and this is a slide you've seen before, but it bears repeating. Tyler Williams at your annual meeting did a really nice job on this question, but about a 5,000 high school student increase between today and 2025, but then you see it drops off to 90,000, which is about the way where it was around 2016 or so. Okay, so we're going to go up just a little bit, but then we're going to come down. Now, overlay this slide with the next one, and you'll see these are the enrollment projections all together, public 4-year, public 2-year. So the gray color is the 27. So we've gotten 6-year enrollment projections. They go all the way out to 27. You'll see that they're projecting more students, even as, if you look on the preceding slide, the number of high school graduates is going down. You can only do that by retaining more of your students. So what you're seeing here is an emphasis on retention programs, not only getting the students in, retaining them and moving them to graduation. What we don't know is what those next 3 years are going to look like insofar as their projections. We talked last week about Pell students and Pell enrollments. You've probably seen data like these before. This is graphing the number of Pell students that an institution has with your graduation rates. This is the traditional 4-year or 6-year graduation rate at these institutions. You've read reports about those that are up in the upper left-hand corner. And then you heard from at least one of the institutions that's over in the lower right-hand corner. As you think about policy and funding strategies, We believe that the Commonwealth can be best served if you move some of those institutions in the top left quadrant a little bit more towards the right, and some of those in the lower right-hand corner a little up towards the top. So strategies that can expand access for these institutions that are already have high graduation rates, and then strategies that improve retention and completion at those institutions that are enrolling a broad number of students and are largely access institutions. Sum it up. How do you meet your 70% when you have declining high school enrollments? You need to cast a wider net. Right now we have about 72% of recent high school graduates within 16 months go on to some kind of post-secondary education experience, 72%. What would happen if we increase that to 75, 78%? What if you set a goal to bring more students in even as the total number is declining? We need to keep students, not only get them in, but keep them enrolled and keep them engaged. That's why we have a major initiative around internship programs, for example, as a way to engage students. We always need to be reviewing our program offerings to make sure they're aligned with the workforce needs. And then affordability, Senator Edwards, as you have often mentioned. And then my last bullet there is the focus on enrollment planning, and that's sort of where we started this conversation, Madam Chair, about what's the impact of enrollment increase at one institution on another institution, and what tools do we have, and which ones do we want to employ to address any of the issues that you have identified. I'd like now, Madam Chair, if it's okay, to turn to Paula, and she'll step through very quickly 3 slides here related to opportunities that you have, and just call attention to some current activities and future activities. Paula?
Thank you, Peter. Madam Chair, committee members, thank you. The strategies that Peter just talked about really are only going to work if we have a 3-pronged approach, and that's working through our institutions, through statewide initiatives, and through our state budget and policy. It's kind of like a 3-legged stool. If you don't have one, it falls flat. Our efforts will fall flat if we don't approach this comprehensively. So I'm going to step through each one of these 3, but before I do that, I just want to mention that some of these slides, some of the phrases, some of the approaches will look familiar, because you will have seen them as we talked about access, as we talked about Pell eligibility, because they all support the same thing, retention and completion. Our overall efforts, even with the cost study, are really to support and ensure that our student has access, they enroll, they are retained, and then they complete. So as I move forward, first talking about institutions. Here, we've seen it before, scholarships and aid, but our institutions also provide institution-based aid to our students through programs like Promise programs you see at UVA or William & Mary. Also, they're addressing basic needs. These have become even more important over the past few years. The needs of our students. I was talking to a director of a program today. It was a high school program. And they said that they had spoken to one of their advisors. And the advisor was sitting down with a student to go over an application. Before they could get to the application, the student said, I need you to help me find a shelter. Our basic needs of our students, they don't just have them in high school. They bring their whole selves to our college campuses as well. And we have to address those basic needs on campus, even down to hunger and food insecurity. Our campuses are providing food pantries, the Hunger Swipe program where they get to pool their swipes that they have for meals and share with other students on campus, so supporting those types of efforts. Our campuses are really addressing very basic needs. They do that before they can even start to address the academic needs. So we are supporting academic support services on campus through programs such as at ODU. They have a student support services program which targets first-generation, low-income, and students with disabilities, meeting those very unique needs of students on campus. Career services, all of our campuses are talking about this now in terms of internships, providing additional opportunities for them to experience job, workplace experiences off of campus, applied learning experiences. And then community engagement. The community for campus is very wide. One is the physical community outside of their actual campus, so bringing community members on campus, allowing the student to become engaged and involved with the actual community that they're part of. That helps to retain them, help them become involved. An example will be at Richard Bland. They have the Pecan Festival, which brings the community members on campus, or it might be the Pecan Festival, whatever you prefer to say, pecan, where they bring members on campus and students get to know the community that they're living in. But the campus community also includes parents. That's who they also have to think about, the students' parents on campus. So other campus, Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, has a program called RAM Ready, where they're actually targeting the parents, and the parents can take an orientation course so they can better understand what their child is experiencing, understand the college culture, the deadlines, the pressures, so they can better support their students. Many of our campuses have programs like that where they have Facebook pages for the parents so they can all talk about some of their same issues. It's all very important to the retention of the student. Their family has to have that support for them. Another area that we have to look at is statewide initiatives. How can we support it? And again, we're talking about affordability is at the top bullet again. So affordable pathways, ways that we can help ensure that students have pathways to college. Transfer VA is one of those great efforts that we put forth to help ease the transitions for students from 2-year colleges to 4-year. And dual enrollment provides opportunities for students to get a head start and start taking some of those college courses while still in high school. Again, making sure that they are shortening their time and or making sure they end on time and at a lower cost. Workforce initiatives, making sure that our efforts are aligned with careers, so tech talent, workforce credential program, and G3, all with ensuring they have affordable pathways to careers. Again, focusing on careers internships. Again, the state establishing programs that will help encourage internships and other employment-based applied learning opportunities for students. Again, giving them the reason why they're there. And then lastly, post-secondary going and completion culture. Really, the state taking a role in creating a culture where the expectation is for every student, not only to complete high school, but to go on to something after high school. And oftentimes you may hear this term being used as college-going culture, and we tend to use post-secondary going culture because we want to make sure they have a choice. It doesn't have to always be college, but they need to do something after high school. And so the expectation, starting that language, starting that investment early to say that we expect you to do something after high school and building that culture, and then whatever it is you choose to complete it. And then lastly, state budget and policy. Again, affordability at the top of this list here. We're speaking specifically to need-based aid and balancing that with operational support for our institutions. You'll see us talking about that. We'll help address that through our cost study that we're doing now to determine what that exact balance should be, or talk about what that balance should be, or make suggestions around it, what that formula can be. Supporting student support services that I mentioned earlier at our college campuses as they submit proposals for student support service programs and career and workforce planning programs. And then you sit in a great position to see for basic needs alignment, not just supporting the services that campuses offer, but ensuring there's alignment across state agencies. An example of that would be like the SNAP program through the Department of Social Services, ensuring that as we see these programs that offer benefits, that they're also available to our college students. So with SNAP, for example, ensuring that when they're taking classes, that those classes can stand for that workforce training requirement that's available, that's required for SNAP credits or for SNAP benefits. So you can sit and see the alignment across programs and make sure that students are eligible, and their families who are supporting them are eligible for those benefits. They could go through housing and transportation as well. All these support systems that you have a great position to kind of see the overall layout and ensure that there's alignment. So you are positioned perfectly to ensure that that three-legged stool that I mentioned at the very beginning is strong, and it's strong enough that our students and our families can stand on and count on as they reach for our 70% goal and we become the best state for education.
Questions?
I have a question.
You are fortunate.
I have a question for one of you.
Senator Edwards.
Peter's a lot more fun to
Decline in
Open game.
projected decline of
We
high
can't hear
school
you, John.
graduates. Explain the projected decline of high school graduates to 2037. I'm not sure I understand that.
Where are you?
On this projection of Virginia high school graduates, projected enrollment declines are lower than the national average. I'm not sure I understand that graph.
Madam Chair, Senator Edwards, we're observing that we're going down, but nationally the decline is even greater. And so some of those states that we traditionally have recruited from, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, those numbers are even more dramatic at those institutions.
Well, why would there be a decline of high school graduates?
Because there are fewer births.
Few-
I don't mean to be flip.
Explain that to you later, Tom.
That's the reason where the whole population is declining.
Right. There's a we are not replacing our population at the same rate that we had been replacing it, and it's
Okay.
some through immigration, some through natural birth and death, and how what goes on there. So it's the combination of all the demographic features.
Is this true throughout the whole country?
This is true throughout the nation right now. A similar chart for every state.
Yeah. Okay.
A little less so in Texas, Florida.
Yeah.
Arizona perhaps is a little different.
Huh. We need more immigrants. Is that right?
That's not
Is
going to
that
help.
the conclusion?
The strategy. Thanks, Madam Chair. We really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you 3 weeks in a row, and I wish you best here in the next couple of weeks. I know you got a lot on your plate. So
I'm looking
We're-
forward to some very positive.
We're not
proposals.
going to, we don't have to do it now, but
containment.
at some point, I'd like to have a discussion on dual enrollment. There have been some issues and concerns raised around dual enrollment and its transferability to colleges and universities. And
we'd be happy to do that, Madam Chair. We just had a discussion with our council on that very topic, and they left us with a charge to do a little bit more. So this will be on our list of work this summer. I'd be happy to meet with you anytime.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. That completes our discussions for this afternoon, and thank you all for coming.
I wasn't going to bring it up. I was